Some nights don't end when the lights go out. Some places don't empty when the doors are locked. And some moments, no matter how ordinary they begin, leave behind a question that follows you for the rest of your life. If someone was watching you, how would you ever know? What you're about to hear isn't about monsters, ghosts, or things that go bump in the night. It's about houses that never felt the same again, about campuses that stopped feeling safe, about strangers who didn't want to hurt anyone. They just wanted to be seen. This is the first of 3 stories, and once you finish it, you may never feel alone in your own home again. This happened several summers ago, back when my life was still simple enough that the worst thing I worried about was disappointing my parents or saying the wrong thing to my girlfriend. I was 17 years old, still living in my childhood home, the same one my parents had raised me in since before I could walk. Every corner of that house felt mapped into my bones. I knew which steps creaked, which cabinet doors stuck, and how the light from the hallway bled into my bedroom at night if the door was left open even an inch. That house was safety, predictability, routine, which is why the weekend my parents left still stands out so vividly in my memory. They didn't just step out for dinner or disappear for a few hours. They left for days. No chores waiting, no surprise check-ins, no reminders to lock the doors or keep the noise down. That alone should have felt wrong. My parents were the type who lived for order, the type who believed that a well-maintained home reflected a well-maintained life. Vacations were rare. Time away together was almost non-existent. They were always home, cleaning, organizing, reorganizing. So when they told me they were going out of town for the weekend and that I was staying behind, it felt like the universe had glitched. Naturally, I did what any 17-year-old with questionable judgment and sudden freedom would do. I invited MJ over. MJ was my girlfriend at the time, and if I'm being honest, she was chaos in human form. Not bad chaos, just tempting chaos. She had this mischievous energy, like everything was a game and rules existed only to be bent. That was part of the appeal. It was also part of the reason we didn't last. But that weekend, none of that mattered. The house was empty, the summer air was warm, and the backyard pool glowed like an invitation. The moment MJ stepped outside and saw it, I knew I was in trouble. Her eyes lit up, not with excitement, but with ideas. Skinny dipping, she said immediately, like she'd been waiting to say it all day. I laughed it off at first, told her the neighbors would see, told her it was stupid, told her my parents would somehow know. She just smiled, and then she started making her case. She talked about how rare this was, how we'd never have the chance again, how life was about moments like this, moments you remembered forever. I'd always been the well-behaved kid, the polite one, the one teachers trusted and parents liked. Even now, I still catch myself being too nice for my own good. MJ knew that about me. She knew exactly which buttons to press. Eventually, logic lost to adrenaline. And just like that, we were slipping into the water under the cover of darkness, laughing too loudly, hearts racing for reasons that had nothing to do with the temperature. The pool was heated, and the contrast between the warm water and the cool night air was intoxicating. The stars stretched endlessly overhead. The world felt suspended, like nothing existed beyond that backyard. For a while, it was perfect, romantic even. The pool sat directly outside a row of large bay windows that looked into the living room. Because the lights inside were on and the outside was pitch black, we could see everything inside the house, as if it were a display. It reminded me of a dollhouse. Every room exposed, every detail visible. Oddly enough, that view made me feel safer, like the house was still watching over us. That feeling didn't last. MJ was talking about something trivial, something I can't even remember now, when my eyes drifted back toward the windows. That's when I saw it. At first, my brain refused to register what it was looking at. On the far wall of the living room, where no one should have been standing, there was a shadow. Not a reflection, not a trick of light. A moving shadow. It slid slowly across the wall, elongated and unmistakably human, before disappearing out of view, like someone walking deeper into the house. Every muscle in my body locked up. My heart slammed, so hard it felt like it might echo. Someone was inside. I didn't scream. I didn't panic out loud. I leaned toward MJ and whispered, "We need to get out. Right now." She heard something in my voice she'd never heard before. She didn't argue. We moved quickly, quietly, trying to dry off just enough to avoid dripping everywhere. I told her to hide in the pool house, turn off the light, and stay silent until I came back. The playfulness was gone from her face. She nodded once and disappeared inside without a word. I cracked open the back door and stepped into the kitchen. The house felt wrong immediately. Too quiet, too still. I grabbed the nearest knife from the cutting board. My parents had raised me to handle problems myself, and in that moment, calling for help felt like failure. I moved room to room, heart pounding, senses stretched thin. That's when I started noticing things. A dining chair pulled slightly away from the table. A picture frame tilted just enough to catch my eye. A coffee mug on the counter that I didn't remember using. Small things. Pointless things. Things no rational burglar would bother with. I checked every room on the ground floor. Nothing. All the doors were locked. All the windows sealed. There was nowhere someone could have gone. That's when the fear really set in. Because if someone had been inside, where were they now? Eventually, bravado gave way to reality. I called the police. They arrived quickly, searched the house and yard, and found nothing. No forced entry. No footprints. No explanation. One officer suggested I might have scared the intruder off. I didn't believe him. MJ and I didn't sleep much that night. We barricaded ourselves in the bedroom and waited for morning. At 4 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps above us. Slow, careful. Someone was upstairs. I grabbed the knife and ran. By the time I reached the front door, it was wide open. Whoever had been inside was gone. In the morning, we discovered the final detail. Every kitchen knife was missing. Every single one. That wasn't theft. That was a message. To this day, I still don't know how they got in, or where they hid while the police searched. But sometimes, when a house feels too quiet, I still picture that shadow on the wall. Watching. This happened last year during Hollywood Bash weekend at Rowan University. If you don't go to Rowan, or didn't grow up around here, it's hard to explain how harmless the campus usually feels. Glassboro isn't a city. It's not dangerous. It's the kind of suburban town where streets go quiet after midnight, and the loudest thing you hear most nights is someone laughing too loudly on their way back from party. That sense of safety is exactly what made what happened so unsettling. Holly Bash is Rowan's biggest event of the year. It takes over Holly Bush Green every spring with carnival rides, food trucks, inflatable games, and a concert headlined by a surprise artist. People compare it to Coachella, which is obviously an exaggeration, but the energy is real. Everyone shows up. Even people who usually keep to themselves get swept into it. I was a sophomore at the time, living in Chestnut Hall. That night, I'd been hopping between friends' dorms, drinking just enough to feel loose, but not enough to lose my awareness. By the time I left my friend's place, it was around 2:30 a.m. Late, but not unusual. I didn't think twice about walking back alone. Earlier that night, apparently around 12:30, there had been reports of a large group of masked people riding bikes around campus, banging on doors and circling dorms. I didn't know that at the time. People were posting about it online while it was happening, but I hadn't checked my phone. I was just focused on getting back to my room. Looking back, that ignorance might have saved me from panicking earlier. Or maybe it made everything worse. I swiped into Chestnut Hall and stepped inside. The building was quiet in that eerie, after-hours way college dorms get when most people have finally passed out. The fluorescent lighting buzzed softly overhead. My footsteps echoed more than usual. I was walking toward the stairs when something caught my attention. Someone was sitting in the lounge. That alone wasn't strange. People crash in common areas all the time, studying, waiting for friends, killing time. But there was something off about him. He was wearing a full black ski mask. Not a COVID mask. Not a scarf. A ski mask. And he wasn't on his phone. Wasn't watching TV. Wasn't talking to anyone. He was just sitting there. Still. It took my brain a second to process what I was seeing. I slowed my steps, then stopped completely near the entrance to the lounge. My heart started to thud. Not from fear yet, but confusion. Why would anyone be wearing that inside a dorm at 2:30 in the morning? Before I could rationalize it away, he moved, He jumped off the couch in one quick, aggressive motion and turned directly toward me. That was enough. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Run." I spun and sprinted down the hallway, my shoes slapping against the tile as I ducked into the nearest bathroom and locked the door behind me. My hand was shaking so badly, I fumbled with the lock. I pressed my back against the door, holding my breath. For a moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat roaring in my ears. I waited for footsteps, for pounding, for someone trying to handle. Nothing came. I stayed in that bathroom for at least 5 minutes, maybe more. Time stretched in that horrible way it does when you're scared and alone. Eventually, the hallway went completely silent again. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone was drunk. Maybe I'd misunderstood the situation. But my gut wouldn't let it go. Slowly, I cracked the door open and peeked out. The hallway was empty. I stepped out and shut the bathroom door quietly behind me. I didn't want to sprint again. It would only draw attention if someone was still nearby. So I walked calmly toward the other exit of the building. That's when I saw him again. He was back in a lounge, still wearing the mask. This time, he was positioned directly across from the path I needed to take. His bike was leaned against the door, and there was a chair wedged between the wall and the frame like it had been jammed there deliberately, blocking the exit. My stomach dropped. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my pepper spray, gripping it so tightly my fingers hurt. I didn't aim it at him. I didn't say anything. I just made sure he could see it. A silent message. Don't try anything. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat as I walked past him. I didn't break stride. I didn't look at his eyes. He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even react. It was like he wanted me to walk by. Like the whole point was for me to see him sitting there, blocking the door, masked and silent. I pushed through the exit and stepped outside. The cool night air hit my face, and for a split second, I felt relief. Then I heard bikes behind me. The sound started faint, tires humming against pavement, then grew louder. I glanced over my shoulder and saw 3 more masked people riding up alongside me. My blood ran cold. They didn't grab me, didn't shove me or block my path. They just rode close, too close, laughing, talking over each other, saying things I couldn't fully make out. Mocking me, taunting me. One of them lifted something in his hand. It looked like a gun. Another one did the same. My chest tightened so hard it felt like I couldn't breathe. I don't know if they were real guns. They could have been airsoft. They could have been fake. But in that moment, it didn't matter. The intention was clear. They wanted me scared. They wanted me aware of how vulnerable I was. I kept walking, refusing to react, every step feeling like it might be my last. I could feel how close they were, just out of reach, just enough to remind me they controlled the situation. When I reached Magnolia, I texted my friend and asked him to meet me outside. He came immediately and walked me back to Chestnut. The masked bikers were gone by then. Vanished. Like they'd never been there at all. I didn't call the police that night. I wasn't hurt. Nothing had technically happened. But I didn't sleep. Not really. Every sound outside my window felt amplified. Every laugh from the street made my stomach twist. The next morning, I told my mom everything. She reported it immediately. That's when I found out I wasn't alone. Friends started texting me, guys I knew, people I trusted, telling me they'd also been approached by masked groups. Some said guns had been pulled on them. Some said they'd been followed. Campus police finally took it seriously. There were rumors, of course. Some people said it was just local kids trying to scare students. Others thought it was organized. No one ever got caught. What haunts me isn't that they could have hurt me. It's that they didn't want to. They wanted me to know they were there. I've never walked home alone the same way since. This story happened 2 summers ago, back when I was still dating Amanda. I didn't talk about it for a long time, not because it was embarrassing, but because it involved people who weren't mine to expose. Amanda and her family were private in a way that felt intentional, like secrecy was baked into their lifestyle. Now that we've been broken up for over a year, enough distance has passed that I feel comfortable finally putting it into words. At the time, Amanda was working as a camp counselor for a summer program in the city. It wasn't close to home, about a 25-minute drive from her neighborhood, but she loved the job in a way I never quite understood. The work didn't match her long-term goals or her upbringing, but she threw herself into it anyway. Amanda came from money. Not flashy, new money wealth, quiet, old money comfort. Her house was exactly what you'd picture. A massive property tucked into a manicured suburban neighborhood. 3 stories tall, wide hallways, vaulted ceilings, and enough rooms that parts of the house always felt unused. Her parents traveled constantly. Business trips, charity events, vacations disguised as obligations. They were rarely home, and when they were, the dynamic between the 3 of them felt strange. Cold, transactional, like coworkers forced to share a living space. Despite that, or maybe because of it, Amanda hosted a lot. So when the camp counselors started planning an end-of-summer party, her house was the obvious choice. It wasn't the first time she'd hosted something like this, but it was my first time being there for one. Her parents were out of town, of course. They always were. The party got big fast. Dozens of people crowded into the house, spilling into the backyard, drinks everywhere, music shaking the walls. It was loud, chaotic, and honestly fun at first. Most of the people were friendly, just looking to blow off steam after a long summer. Except for Pete. From the moment he walked in, something about him rubbed me the wrong way. He was loud, overly confident, and spent an uncomfortable amount of time talking to Amanda. And not in a casual way. This was full-on flirting. He wasn't subtle about it. I felt disrespected, but I didn't want to start drama. Amanda and I had already had arguments about her being too friendly with other guys. I didn't want to look insecure or controlling. So instead of confronting him, I decided to outplay him. Every time Pete finished a drink, I handed him another. I laughed at his jokes, hyped him up, encouraged him. My alcohol tolerance has always been stupidly high, and I knew I could handle it better than he could. By midnight, he was done, passed out on the basement couch, drooling into a pillow. I felt smug, until Amanda called me out on it. She accused me of doing it on purpose. I denied it at first, then admitted I might have helped things along. We argued a little, but it wasn't explosive. Just another crack in an already fractured relationship. As the night wore on, the house grew louder, messier, more out of control. I needed air. I stepped outside into the driveway, leaning against Amanda's car, staring up at the stars. The contrast between the chaos inside and the quiet outside was calming. That's when I noticed him. A figure standing at the far edge of the property, barely visible under a street lamp. He wasn't moving, just standing there. At first, I assumed it was someone from the party who'd wandered too far, maybe taking a phone call. But something felt off. The longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. I approached him, probably drunk confidence. Definitely a bad decision. "Hey," I called out. "Can I help you?" The figure took a few slow steps toward me before stopping. It was a man. I couldn't see his face clearly, but his posture was relaxed in a way that made my skin crawl. He didn't answer my question. Instead, he asked, "Are your parents home?" The way he said it, calm, almost rehearsed, made my stomach twist. Before I could respond, he repeated the question. This time, he used Amanda's parents' names. He knew exactly whose house this was. I lied, told him my parents were inside. He nodded once and said, "Okay." Then he turned and walked away, straight down the street, disappearing into the darkness. I watched him until I couldn't see him anymore. Something about the encounter stuck with me, but I tried to brush it off. I went back inside and ended up in the basement playing ping pong with a few people. It was quieter down there, and honestly, I needed that. At some point, I heard the doorbell ring. That shouldn't have happened. Everyone had been told to use the back door. The front door wasn't supposed to be in use at all. That's when it hit me. Amanda was passed out upstairs. I was probably the only sober person left in the house. I excused myself and went upstairs. As I passed Amanda's room, I gently turned off her light and shut the door. She didn't stir. When I reached the front door, a girl named Bella was standing there, completely drunk. I asked who rang the doorbell. She said some old guy, claimed to be a family friend returning something he borrowed. I felt my stomach drop. "You let him in?" I asked. She shrugged and wandered off. I ran upstairs to Amanda's parents' room. Drawers were pulled open. Jewelry boxes were empty. The room had been ransacked. He was robbing them. I was about to leave the room when I saw movement in the mirror on the back of the door. A shift. A shadow. Before I could turn around, he tackled me. We hit the floor hard, knocking the wind out of me. He clawed at my shirt like he was trying to rip it off. I managed to shove him away, more panic than strength. He scrambled to his feet, sprinted across the room, and dove out an open window. I watched him hit the roof, drop into the side yard, and disappear. I didn't chase him. I called the police, not to report the robbery, but to help me clear the house. They came, shut the party down, and escorted everyone out. Afterward, I slapped Pete awake and told him to leave. He threw up before calling an Uber. The next morning, Amanda told her parents. They were furious. They didn't call the police. No cameras. No interest. Looking back, what scares me most isn't the robbery. It's that he knew. He knew they weren't home. And I still don't know how.